AMD, you done fucked up. Earlier this year, we said, AMD, don't fuck this up, okay? And they just can't seem to stop doing it. In a span of 48 hours, AMD has had to put out 3 panicked statements and updates about what it claims are a mix of errors and no, you don't get it. And on Sunday at about 4:16 p.m., which is only 4 minutes off from the number representing what AMD was on when it put out its newest statement, it said, "You're confused. This is some Asus tier deflection." I'm pretty sure we have a lot of prior examples of what happens when companies say, no, you're all confused. Ah yes, the classic blaming the customer aspect for being confused. NZXT pulled an Asus by calling everybody confused. The millions of you're confused. Rather than accepting accountability for its god-awful communication abilities, AMD leans heavily on the passive voice to say that, quote, there has been some confusion, end quote, and that they want to, quote, clarify misunderstandings, end quote. That's right, and next AMD said, we'll put a pin in that and let's table that discussion for now before going back to a room full of the world's biggest techno douchebags to beg for more handouts. So it's confusion. It's not that AMD caused mass panic in their consumers as a fault of their own incompetent postings where they had to retcon not 1, but 2 errors within 2 days. And it's also not that they moved a still irrelevant GPU architecture into a maintenance branch. No, it is instead your fault for being confused. AMD's brilliance is confounding to even the brightest among us. Among us. Among us. Amogus. AMD. Passive voice, non-apology statement where everybody else is confused, even though in this instance, AMD published objectively incorrect information, like with their USB-C situation, which was one of their 2 retcons they did on that post, and yet somehow it's not a fucking error, it's everyone else who's wrong. Its blog post says similar. They've heard your feedback and want to clear up the confusion. This is corporate gaslighting shit that AMD has a long and storied history of, but for the last year, they hadn't done a whole lot of it. Maybe they're having withdrawals. They missed the sniffing the gaslighting fumes and had to go back for another hit, even though meanwhile NVIDIA is off in low fucking Earth orbit with its $5 trillion market cap, making partnerships with Palantir to ensure the AI-fueled destruction of privacy and personal freedoms and abandonment of the GPU gaming market. And somehow, AMD can't just shut the fuck up and put the GPU in the bag. Before that, this video is brought to you by Haven and their new BF360 Flow case. The Haven BF360 Flow is a high airflow case with a focus on performance, with the model that includes fans using 2 180mm front intake fans at 40mm thick, in combination with a 120mm rear exhaust fan. In our previous testing of the case, we found its thermal performance to be among the best performers on our charts. The BF360 uses a scooped shroud near the GPU that our smoke testing found deflects the air into the leftmost GPU fan for more targeted GPU intake. It also has marked cable management channels, rubber grommets on most metal contact points, and what we think is overall good build quality. Learn more about the Haven BF360 Flow at the link in the description below. Here's the quick background. In AMD's 25.10.2 driver release notes on October 29th, the company announced its spookiest announcement yet. Quote, new game support and expanded Vulkan extension support is available to Radeon TM RX 7000 and 9000 series graphics products, end quote, effectively signaling through its communication the end of new game support, or more correctly, optimizations for RDNA 1 and 2 in what we felt was the most unforthcoming way possible. These products are still shipping today and are used outside of DGPUs as well. The company also noted, quote, USB-C power charging has been disabled for Radeon RX 7900 series graphics products. Users requiring this feature are recommended to use a prior version, AMD Software Adrenaline Edition 25.3.1, end quote. Following this announcement, AMD clarified its statement to PCGamesHardware.de through machine translation, explaining, quote, RDNA 1 and RDNA 2 graphics cards will continue to receive driver updates for critical security and bug fixes to focus on optimizing and delivering new and improved technologies for the latest GPUs. AMD Software Adrenaline Edition 25.10.2 puts Radeon RX 5000 and 6000 and RX 6000, which is there twice because they hate it so much, and RDNA 2 graphics cards into maintenance mode. Future driver updates with targeted game optimizations will focus on RDNA 3 and RDNA 4 GPUs, end quote. The company also retracted its statement about disabling the USB-C power charging for its RX 7900. As noted by PCGH's appended comment stating, quote, AMD itself has confirmed that the reference to the USB power supply was an error, In a statement to PCGH, AMD apparently said, quote, "We would like to inform you that the recently released release notes for AMD software Adrenaline Edition 25.10.2 contained incorrect information. These have since been corrected. There are no changes to the USB-C functionality of the RX 7900 series GPUs in the 25.10.2 driver. The originally released release notes contained a ROM line that was removed. The release notes were updated accordingly." End subquote, end quote. The USB-C situation was what you would call a fuck-up, not confusion. And AMD's best outcome here would be to, we think, just simply apologize for at least causing confusion using a more active voice, if not doing the best, which is that saying it screwed up. Radeon's been the bastard child of AMD ever since AMD bought ATI, which was the parent company of the GPUs that became Radeon. And so it's really not a surprise in some ways that it can't get its own driver release notes right for GPUs that it is still actively supporting as well for its best branches, its kind of mainline branch. In response to the backlash, to the response to the post of the backlash on PC Games hardware, AMD clarified its clarification to PC Games hardware to Tom's hardware in a second clarification post clarifying the original clarification. And clearly, this flow of communication does not contribute to the confusion in any way at all. This is the right way to do it, AMD. You should always make sure you put out a clarifying statement to one publication and then put out a different one to a different publication, clarifying the clarification. That's a good way to do it. I'm getting real nervous about the amount of times that 1080 Ti is shaking. This is really the only GPU I care about in this office. Quote, "New features, bug fixes, and game optimizations will continue to be delivered as required by market needs in the maintenance mode branch," end quote, which Tom's hardware somehow bought wholesale as getting, quote, "day zero game support and driver updates," end quote, but that's not what that says, because those words are literally not in that statement. The statement says, "delivered as required by market needs," in a separate branch. Market needs doesn't mean fucking anything. AMD is vague posting about its GPUs and their support, and then it's turning around and blaming the whole internet for being confused about AMD's own vague posting. So this is a non-committal attempt to stop the bleeding that AMD put out to Tom's hardware before their newest one that they put out to everybody, and it didn't actually pledge to walking anything back. It did not walk back the statement. It just said it again in a slightly different way. And if anything, we think it's likely that it caused more panic and so-called confusion. And we'd also like to know at what point a user's needs constitute the market's needs, because that's not clear, and that's sort of the problem. So a couple days later, on Sunday, which is today for me, AMD emailed us this, quote, "Hi, comma," end quote. Hi. Quote, "It appears there has been some confusion regarding the driver we posted on Thursday. To help clarify any misunderstandings, we have published a blog providing additional context. The full text from the blog is included below, +++, continued support for every Radeon gamer. We've heard your feedback and want to clear up the confusion around the AMD software. As we all know, nesting confusion twice makes it exponentially powerful. This is for Adrenaline Edition 25.10.2 driver release." Quote continues, "This update introduces two optimized driver paths, one for RDNA 1 and 2, Radeon RX 5000 and 6000 series, and one for RDNA 3 and 4, 7000 and 9000 series. Here's what this means for you, camel-cased colon. This is not the end of support for RDNA 1 and RDNA 2. I just want to point this out. I noticed that they were doing double spaces after some of the periods in this, which was originally how MLA and I think APA did it. Typically, I only see double spaces after periods today if something was written by a lawyer. I'm just saying. Like, it's just... Anyway, let's continue. Space, your Radeon RX 5000 and RX 6000 series GPUs will continue to receive bullet game support for new releases, stability and game optimizations, security and bug fixes. The difference is that these products now benefit from a dedicated stable driver branch, one built on years of tuning and optimization. This approach helps deliver a smoother, more consistent experience for your games while insulating previous generation GPUs from improvements. No, wait, that's not what that says. From rapid changes designed for brand new architectures. I mixed that up. I thought they were saying it insulated them from good things. Also, just can we get some Dramamine for AMD here? The amount of spin is going to give someone a headache. Now, credit to them, this is cleverly written. Quote, "Our goal is simple, to give every Radeon gamer the best experience possible. By separating the code paths, our engineers can move faster with new features for RDNA 3 and 4. while keeping RDNA 1 and 2 stable and optimized for current and future games, end quote. Again, clever, but these are also synonymous with a reduction of support by nature of what they have written here for RDNA 1 and RDNA 2, which RDNA 2 especially, still actively sold into the market, actually heavily. Quote, our commitment. We've supported Radeon gamers for generations, and that commitment isn't changing. Whether you're gaming on an RX 5000, RX 6000, or latest RX 9000, you'll continue to get the reliability, performance, and care you expect from AMD. Space, not a lawyer, because we're all part of the same gaming community, and every Radeon gamer matters. AMD talks about how it has supported Radeon gamers for generations, but tell that to the 5 people who bought the Radeon 7, or the 20 people who bought Vega. AMD actually has a history of terminating long-term support or allowing some of its GPUs to fall off the cart when it's updating the drivers, and it does so sooner, we think, than its competitor NVIDIA. Actually, there's evidence of this, and maybe that deserves a whole separate video at this point, just like we did for Intel's driver updates. NVIDIA just has better long-term driver support, and that's in spite of the fact that NVIDIA is so busy right now, mostly with shoving AI suppository devices up its own ass. But it's still managed in between the ass-up shoving AI suppository device process to maintain support for the 1080 Ti up until October, where it lasted for over 7 years of active support and will now get a commitment for 3 years of ongoing security support. Instead of trying to define this so-called market need in its Tom statement before its newest statement, reclarifying the clarification of the clarification, we'd propose that AMD actually listen to its community and recommit the actively sold products into the primary driver branch. AMD's bullshit statement makes it seem like RDNA 2 GPUs aren't actively sold anymore, but they are, and a lot, like in lots of products. And it also makes it seem like they don't deserve the latest and greatest optimizations, improvements, and new features added to them for products that are still being sold. Like, this is some spin I saw on Reddit where people were like, it's old. Yeah, it's an old architecture that is sold today in brand new fucking devices that they launched this year. Those should continue to get the priority branch of updates, not this sort of guise of, oh, we want you on the stable one that doesn't get all the latest and greatest stuff and the newest features for products that are 6 months old. So the fact is that the RDNA 2 product is all over the market today. You walk into a Best Buy and buy something with RDNA 2 in it. The bifurcation of support into 2 branches is especially concerning considering the number of RDNA 2 based products in circulation, in addition to all the discrete 5000 and 6000 series GPUs, some of which are still sold and were released between 2019 and 2023, that are now shunted to the second favorite child branch. This branch into a maintenance mode will also affect the Ryzen Z2 Go processor that the company announced less than 6 months ago in June, currently sold in Lenovo Legion Go OS handhelds. The Ryzen Z2A processors, currently sold in the ROG Xbox Ally, which is brand new for the non-X variant, as well as all of the 9000HX notebook processors, which the company announced in January of this year. It also affects several current-gen consoles, including the PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X. However, it's likely that these vendors self-maintain their devices. Several handhelds are affected, mini PCs, notebooks, not to mention Ryzen 7000 and 9000 series CPUs using iGPUs based on RDNA 2. In October of 2023, AMD released its Chinese exclusive Radeon 6750 GRE in both 10GB and 12GB variants, which means if someone bought it immediately at launch, their new graphics card would have already been moved into the secondary driver branch after seeing priority support for roughly 2 years. The Steam Deck also uses RDNA 2 architecture, but our understanding is that it should be less affected by the change due to Valve's use of doing things itself properly. And so AMD's actions here relating to RDNA 2 being a second-class citizen when it still sells so many products that have RDNA 2, we think is completely ludicrous. It really should be as simple as all actively sold new products get priority branch support. It is that simple. Their statement sounds nice. It's a bunch of fucking spin. That's what it is. If you read the statement properly, like carefully, you can see that. And they are trying to slide it past everyone. So even Intel is putting AMD to shame right now, as we showed in our recent Battlemage revisit, where we demonstrated how Intel tracked and resolved over 640 issues across 10 months, launched dozens of drivers in that period against AMD's lower quantity of updates, and made more consistent improvements to its software suite, All of this is happening at a time when confidence in NVIDIA's drivers for gaming is at an all-time low as a result of its botched, disgraceful launch at the beginning of this year. And AMD still can't keep itself out of trouble for 10 months. It's not about what AMD said initially at this point. It's also not about what AMD intends at this point. It's about AMD's response to the situation, where AMD's decision was to gaslight and manipulate its consumers into believing that they were confused, rather than just say, we fucked up, we're fixing it. It is that simple, it's reprehensible, and it really shouldn't be tolerated by anyone any more than NVIDIA's own driver fuck-ups that they had all beginning of this year. This is like right when AMD was starting to look kind of competent. Apparently that was by accident or by chance, but it is unbelievably disappointing, which the meme is, it stands for another massive disappointment that continues to be proven true, that AMD can't just keep itself clean. Now, on the other hand, customers could always just stop buying AMD's products, or at least its GPUs, if it's going to do this kind of stuff. Maybe then the company will realize that market needs include supporting the fucking product in a very clearly communicated way that consumers can't be confused by. If we're going to go with the confusion narrative, you got to get the communication straight. Look, we're glad AMD is saying it's going to do better than what it initially said, maybe. But AMD still misrepresented how these events unfolded by gaslighting, and likewise, it's still bifurcating its support and rebranding it with PR spin as a, quote, dedicated stable driver branch, unquote, rather than what it actually is, which is what they originally called it, a maintenance branch. Now, this isn't commonly known, but AMD actually makes its executives, when they sign up, wear a magnet in both their shoe and their mouth so that when they do interviews, they can shove their foot into it more easily. In an exclusive interview with Barron's in November of 2022 during its RX 7000 series launch, AMD's head of graphics engineering, David Wan, was asked, quote, what differentiates AMD's offering versus the competition, end quote. He responded, quote, think about it. You're buying a brand new graphics card and you would like it to be future-proof. This will give you a tremendous benefit, end quote. Now, because he told us to, we did think about it, and we agree. That would be a tremendous benefit, especially if you could actually trust what he said in that interview. Thanks to NVIDIA ever looming as competition, AMD is in no position to be screwing up its communication this much. They should be doing anything they can to positively set themselves apart from NVIDIA. In typical Radeon fashion, though, AMD's currently only been successful at setting itself apart in the worst ways possible. NVIDIA, for all of the things that it's doing that really suck right now and are corrupt and awful, at least has a track record of maintaining game-optimized drivers with its GPUs with very clear communication, and they give you a long heads up as to when that's going to change. Take, for example, the 1080 Ti, which released in March 2017 and received its final game-ready driver in October 2025, corresponding with the end of Windows 10 support and after over 7 years of support. NVIDIA noted that quarterly security updates would be provided for the next 3 years. If customers have the choice between a GPU that has action and evidence-based updates for going on a decade and possibly as low as a year before being moved into a lower priority branch, we know which one they're going to pick. Even if that means paying more for just the assurance that the drivers will be properly maintained, maybe, throughout the graphics device's entire lifespan. And besides, they'll probably come with those AI suppository devices soon. It just transmits the data straight to NVIDIA from your... Okay, look, it's not the most, it's going to be difficult to market. It's not particularly easy to recommend the alternative in NVIDIA right now, which is a company hell-bent on selling out safety and privacy as Juan jumps for joy with Palantir's executives, but they sure look better in their driver support here than AMD. If a market leader does something good, especially if they're the larger one, the smaller ones are going to have to follow. That's part of the benefit of NVIDIA being where it is. The more they do that's good, the harder it is going to be for the smaller of the companies to follow them because they just have less funding. So that's why when NVIDIA did its paper launch at the beginning of this year, we basically begged AMD to not fuck this up, and they have repeatedly managed to do so. AMD's Radeon department continues to impress us with its ability to seemingly squander any opportunity it gets. Regardless of AMD's actual intent, its follow-up gaslighting response is damaging to its brand credibility. If there are any meaningful updates to this at this point, if AMD clarifies its clarification of its corrected driver post that it needed to clarify, then we'll let you know probably in hardware news. But until then, at least we're given a solid reminder that NVIDIA's stranglehold remains frustratingly unchallenged by its competitors. Intel is starting to challenge that in the low end, but Intel is owned about 4% by NVIDIA, which put $5 billion into it. So AMD, get to it. Come on. All right. That's it for this one. Before this card falls over, it's the most valuable thing here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly, like by grabbing one of our Blind Eye t-shirts, which we sold to support our AI GPU black market smuggling documentary. You should check that out if you haven't seen it. And, oh man, this is a global constant through my career, complaining about AMD drivers. They can't keep it clean for like a year. So thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.